Yes, everyone come to SA 402 now. So we'll be finishing off SA 400 series today. It's hardly two standards. Yes, so standard 402, standards on auditing. This relates to what? Auditing considerations relating to an entity using a service organization. So four terminologies we first have to know. So what do you mean by service organization? What do you mean by service auditor? Similarly, user organization, user auditor. So SO, SA, UO, UA. So as a background, every entity or large size MNC you could say is outsourcing some or the other work to other entity. For example, if you could say L&T used to outsource its employee related services to another organization. Same with respect to Wipro. So any entity which is outsourcing any significant part of their work to some other entity, and that work or that area which it is outsourcing directly relates to our financial statements, then in that case then in that case now suppose Wipro has outsourced it to some other entity. Wipro has outsourced its employee related task to some other entity. That means what? The turnover, or not the turnover but the remuneration, everything will be taken care of by the other entity. They will simply send the statement how many days the employee was present, how many deduction have to be made, PF deduction, this deduction and funda and everything, and the amount to be paid to the employee, everything, the working management, everything will be managed by other entity, employee related to some, suppose X limited. And now they will be simply giving to the report to the Wipro regarding everything, and Wipro will make the payment. So that is now a major expense as well, employee related expense. If you can go in the financial statements, so employee expense is always a major expense in the entity's profit and loss account, right? So when we go to the Wipro, when we go as an auditor of Wipro Limited, as an auditor of Wipro Limited, when we go to audit the Wipro, then what do you think can we do with respect to checking of the employee benefit expenses? How can we start with employee benefit expenses? Any expense, not be it any, not be a employee expense but any expense, how do you start with to check with employee related expense? How can we start with? Yes, do I need to have to start with internal controls first, right? Yes or no? What is the procedure, what is the prospect, what is the controls with respect to employee benefit expenses? So when I go and ask Wipro what is the controls with respect to employee benefit expense, they will simply raise their hand and tell that we don't have any controls, we have simply outsourced the entire work to other entity, and we don't know anything related to internal controls with respect to employee benefit expense. Now how do I get myself comfortable that okay fine, employee benefit expenses, whatever accounting treatment they have given, whatever payment, everything with respect to that employee benefit expense is true and fair, correct or not? How do I get comfortable as an auditor of Wipro? So don't you think I'll have to check with internal controls with respect to employee benefit expense in X limited, since they are overall they are only managing? So then I will have to check with the internal controls in X limited. Yes or no? So that is why as an auditor our additional responsibility, or what all information you need to get from X limited in order for you to get, or in order for you to audit the all those expenses or revenue which is forming part of outsourced nature. Outsourcing. So this is particularly with dealing we are dealing with where the work is outsourced to some other entity, and the expense relating to that expense we have to audit. So here Wipro Limited is our user entity. Wipro Limited is our user entity, and we as an auditor is called as user auditor. So who is the original auditor? User auditor, doing the audit of the user entity. And X Limited here is called as service organization, that is providing service to user entity. And here the auditor is called as what? The auditor of service organization, not us, not we are not the auditor of X Limited. Whoever will be the auditor of X Limited, he will be called as what? Service auditor. Everyone got what we are heading towards? What are we trying to get in this standard SA 402? Audit consideration relating to an entity using a service organization. So, what all consideration you need to consider in user entity when it's using a service organization X Limited? Getting this? So scope, let's see what are covered in the scope. Within the scope, you will see that we have to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence when a user entity uses the service of one or more service organization. So whenever we have outsourced the one or more work to other entity called a service organization, when this SA 402 will apply. Many entities outsource aspects of their business to organizations that provide services ranging from performing a specific task under the direction to replace an entity's entire business unit or function. So you can give any sort of work that they are telling that what all sort of work can be outsourced. So example they have given is tax compliance, employee benefit expenses, or any other sort of expense or any activity with respect to entity you can just outsource. Now many of the service provided by such organization are integral to the entity's business operations. That is what I was focusing, that many of these activities are actually directly affecting our financial statement, are integral to business operations, and therefore, those are the entities or activities which are relevant for our audit. However, any other activity which is not that much relevant for the financial statement will not be relevant for our audit to go and apply SA 402 in the case of outsourcing of those activities as well. So we will have to apply SA 402 wherever it is relevant to the audit, wherever the expense which has been outsourced is also relevant to the audit. So many of the services provided by such organizations are integral to the entity's business operation. However, not everything is related to the audit, not all the operations. For example, you might have outsourced your hiring task to some other entity. So other entity will hire in against you and directly forward you the candidates as an employee. So that is not relevant for audit because that is more or less not reflecting our financial statement. But wherever the major expense or anything which is major in financial statement nature is outsourced is relevant to the audit. So how do we consider it is relevant or not? How do we consider it is relevant or not? You have already read this today morning, first homework. You have already read this. How do we consider if it is relevant to the audit or not? I just told you how it is relevant to the audit. It is relevant to the audit if it is directly relating to my financial reporting process. So if it is relating to my financial reporting process or my financial statement, then it is relevant to the audit. But now again, how do I determine that if it is affecting my financial reporting process or not? So again, these parameters are there for you to determine whether it is relevant to the audit or in a sense, whether it is relevant to our financial reporting or financial activity. This you have gone through today in the morning only, right? I have gone through. So the class of transaction, is it affecting any class of transaction, account balance, disclosure level? Sorry. Then any procedures? Is it relating to any accounting records or any sort of form? Sorry. Right? So this we have gone through in the morning only, right? A service organization services are part of user entities information system. That means what? The service organization services, whatever services they are providing as an SO, for example, employee benefit, employee benefit services, what they are providing, we will consider this as a part of our entity's information system. That means our information system, including related business process as well, relevant to financial reporting. We will consider this as relevant to financial reporting are part of our information system if this service, that is employee benefit expense service which they are providing to us, affect any of the following. Do they affect class of transaction? Do they affect any procedures or any accounting records, electronic or manual form? Whether does this affect any financial reporting process or any controls? I gave you an example of controls surrounding journal entry. Do you remember this example? Park and post. Park and post. So the accountant will not be able to generalize the entry exceeding, suppose example, 10,000. He will be only able to park. It will be posted once the approval is obtained by the senior level of authority. So controls surrounding the journal entry, including non-standard journal entry used to record non-recurring, unusual, and similarly, how are the it is exactly directly affecting the user entity's information system in the sense that is it able to capture the events or condition other than transaction that is significant to the FS. So I hope why these have been considered here in as an question. I hope you are able to get the question what theme they are trying to hear. They are telling that not all services are relevant to the audit, although they might be relevant for our business operations, but not all relevant to the audit. We will consider it as relevant to the audit if it in any way affecting financial reporting process or relevant to financial reporting, we'll consider this that then as a relevant to audit. And how do you consider that is it affecting our financial reporting or relevant to the financial reporting or not? We will evaluate based on these 5 points or 5 to 6 points. Read this question and then we will see what all things are out of scope of SA 400. I'll just quickly tell you what all are out of scope of SA 402. So suppose you have opened a bank account. So you have given your entire banking operation, payments and everything to SBI account, right? So as an auditor, when I comes, I ask you what is the process, how do you make the payment, how do you get the amount. So you just simply tell that we don't do, our bank does this everything on behalf of us. So can I go to bank and apply this SA 402 there? Can I go there in the bank and apply SA 402 that no, my client has outsourced service to you, so I'll be required to perform the internal audit and check how exactly are you performing the payment and the collection services? Can I do so? No, right? So certain sources, certain outsourcing services that you provide are already regulated, are already like sort of, you can say, are provided by the regulated entities. Banks are providing, are regulated by RBI. Similarly, any other operation you can think of is, suppose example, you opened a demat account, so the account will be opened with depository that is already regulated by a SEBI. So any outsourcing services which is provided by some regulated entities, or you can say the services which they have mentioned here in the out of scope, will not be covered under SA 402. That means as an auditor we cannot go there in their books, we cannot go and knock their doors and ask for their books of account and their internal control procedures and manuals. No, right? It is out of scope of SA 402. We don't have to go and follow the procedures which have been prescribed under this standard. So that is what they are saying. FIs, that is financial institution that are limited to processing account held at the financial institution. Similarly, brokers, example ICICI Direct or Zerodha or Upstock, any sort of broker that you will find of security transaction, they are generally regulated by SEBI, right? So you cannot just go and knock their doors and ask them to show their internal controls since you are also handling my client account. No, not like that. And then audit of transaction arising from proprietary financial interest in other entity. So this example, I can tell you one example. Suppose Pooja and Sagar are are having a partnership firm. Now I went and started auditing Pooja individual proprietorship firm. I started auditing proprietorship firm. So I found that okay, she is also a partner in other entity. So can I say that okay, she is holding her financial interest in other entity also? So I'll have to go and check the operating controls of the firm, operating controls within the firm. No, right? So audit of transaction arising from proprietary financial interest in other entity, this we don't have to check. So these all three are out of scope of SA 402. This can be asked to you in the form of MCQ. I don't know, because this is given in bare essay and not many cover this, not many cover this. I know even in most 99% of the books you won't find this. I want you to focus because I feel that okay, this might come as an MCQ. They'll simply tell you four options, and out of four options, these the option three options will be this only, and one option could be like example that we are taking off employee benefit expense or any other sort of expense which is relevant to the audit. So they'll ask you whether 402 is applicable or not. So just give it a reading till here, or even you could say, yeah, whatever we have done till now, just go through it once. Then we'll start with other reporting requirements and what all type 1 type 2 report we need to gather from service auditor and management of the service organization. Yes, everyone gone through? Come to the definitions part. Most of the important definitions we have already covered. SA, UA, SO and UE, right? What is service organization, what is user entity, what is user auditor, what is service auditor. Now other important definition you can see are complementary user entity controls. That means what? Controls that the service organization assumes in the design of its service will be implemented by user entities. That means what? Example, I am outsourcing you the employee related services, right? Now you also assume that, or as an auditor, user auditor, he will also assume that whenever I am outsourcing with you, we have certain relationship, we have certain transaction amongst us. right? So there must be certain control with respect to those transactions, those relationships between the user entity and between the service organization. That is, the controls with respect to these two entities will be complementary to the controls that the service organization will be having. So whatever controls that the service organization will be having with respect to employee benefit expense, the controls that we have amongst us, that is between user entity and service auditor, will be complementary to the controls that we have over there in the service organization. So that is called as what? Complementary user entity controls. And then we are left with what? Type 1 report and type 2 report definition. So now the question arises, now what, how exactly are we going to check the internal controls which are present in the service organization? That is our major concern here, right? So how exactly are we going to assess the controls in the service organization? In the service organization. So come here in page number 51. Page number 51, fourth point. So firstly, we will obtain type 1 and type 2 report. Either of whichever is available, we will obtain first type 1 or type 2 report, right? And then we'll, if not, then we can contact the service organization directly. Either we can through mail them, call them, whatever three way we can communicate with them and try to get to know what all controls are there and evaluate accordingly our understanding, and then visit the service organization if we are not able to contact them. So we can directly go and visit the service organization afterwards, and if we are not able to visit, then we can send some other auditor to visit the service organization, to visit X Limited. If we are the auditor of Wipro Limited, consider yourself as auditor of Wipro. So first question arises, sir, what is then type 1 or type 2 report? Type 1 or type 2 report. So it's a report which is given by the service auditor and by the management, stating that yes, what all controls are there with respect to employee benefit expense in our example. So in our example, they will give us what all controls are there in the service organization. Who will give us this type 1, type 2 report? Management and auditor. Management and the auditor together will give us the what all situation, what exactly is the circumstance over there, what exactly are the controls with respect to employee benefit expense. In the type 1 report, they will simply tell what all controls are there. In type 2 report, they will also tell you are these controls are operating effectively or not. So we are also concerned with operating effectiveness, right? We are not just to see the adequacy, whether it will be able to mitigate the inherent risk, business risk, everything. Yeah, that is fine. But even after the implementation of internal controls, whether they are operating effectively or not, whether they are operating effectively or not. So see here, type 1 report, it's a description which is prepared by the management of the service organization, description about service organization and the service organization system and control objectives and related controls that have been designed and implemented as at a specified date. That means at a particular date, what all controls, everything will be described by whom? You can see by the management. Similarly, there will be a report by service auditor also. See in the second point, you will see there will be a report by service auditor with the same objective of conveying a reasonable assurance that includes service auditor's opinion, the opinion of service auditor on the description of the service organization system, control objectives, related controls, and the suitability and design of the controls to achieve the specified control objectives. So in type 1 report, we are obtaining the report from auditor, service auditor, that is the auditor of X Limited. We are the auditor of Wipro. We are asking the management to describe what all controls are there, what is the objective of the controls, control objectives, and any other related control with respect to that employee benefit expense, right? And then in the second point, we are also obtaining the report from service auditor. He is expressing his opinion on the control objectives and related control, on the controls, description of service organizations, control objectives and related controls.
Sir, in Wipro example, who is the service auditor?
Auditor of X Limited, na? Whoever is doing the audit of X Limited. Suppose I am doing the audit of Wipro and you are doing the audit of X Limited. So I'll be asking you to provide the report on how do you feel that whether there are controls in the X Limited, because you are the auditor of X Limited, you are in the better position to judge and communicate it to me. So I'll ask you, how do you feel that controls are there? What are control objectives? What is the description of organization system? Everything. And I'll ask your opinion on the same in the type 1 report.
Acha, okay, sir.
You are the service auditor. me as a user auditor.
Okay, sir.
ठीक है. Similarly, in type 2 report, I told you what is the difference exactly. It is same as type 1 report, but the major difference here is we are also obtaining the information with respect to whether these controls that they have mentioned in type 1 are they operating effectively or not. That is exactly in type 2 report additional point. So type 2 report, you will tend to read type 1 and read type 2 report both again. And any doubt you can ask. Then Lakshmi, if you have any doubt. Type 1 report and type 2 report. Read this again. And also sub-service organization. Tell me what do you mean by sub-service organization by reading just this. Read type 1 report, type 2 report and sub-service organization and service organization system. Then we'll move forward.
Difference between type 1 and type 2 report is only the last point, na?
Operating effectiveness. They are also
Operative
reporting whether the
effectiveness.
controls are operating effectively or not. In type 1 report, service auditor will be giving his opinion on the control objectives and the description about the organization system. He will give his opinion about the controls which are present there. But again, for you to properly evaluate whether they are operating effectively or not, you better get type 2 report if it is available.
For more detail, na, matlab.
No, not as in detail. The scope, it's the difference in the scope only. They are also mentioning the operating effectiveness. So like I told in SA 315 and SA 330, in SA 315 you check how many controls are there, whether it is adequate to mitigate the controls. Oh sorry, it is adequate to mitigate the risk. Controls are there or not, that is controls existence you can check. But are they properly implemented effectively operating? Are they operating effectively? That means there is no gap in the control, no failure. All controls are passed. After checking test of control, we perform test of control where SA 330, further audit procedure, right? Compliance procedure, test of control. But we check controls existence SA 315. What all controls are there for us to determine control risk? Even after these many controls, how many control risk, how much control risk we can assess? So similarly here type 1 you will just get to know about the controls which are there and also the opinion on the controls by through service auditor's report. However, we need to also check operating effectiveness of internal control, and for that matter type 2 report can also be obtained.
ठीक है sir.
So what do you mean by sub-service organization then? Yes, anyone? What do you mean by sub-service organization?
Sir, it's like subletting.
It's like subletting. So I have already outsourced to you for performing my employee benefit expense services. Now you are overloaded, so you might have outsourced again to some other relevant entity or similar to your entity. So now my controls has to be seen in the sub service organization, and also the controls at service organization also might have to be seen the relevant controls. Not that what we saw was complementary controls, right? So complementary controls in the service organization might have to also be seen, and the relevant controls in the sub service organization. So we will check what all things have to be seen in when it will come there. Now we'll start with what? We'll have to start with understanding what is the relationship between the UE and SO. Understanding the relationship between user entity and service organization, between Wipro and X Limited. Between Wipro and X Limited, what is the relationship, transaction that is happening, the nature of transaction, right? So here you will understand the what is the exact nature of service which is being outsourced to the service organization, or which is being provided by the service organization as a service rendered to us. What is that nature of the service which is being rendered by the SO to us? Similarly, nature and materiality of the transaction. I told you employee benefit expense is very important, materiality wise as well, amount wise as well as nature wise. So you'll have to assess the outsourced service which you have the service which has been rendered by SO, whether is it material or not, what is the nature of that transaction, and then the degree of interaction among Wipro and X Limited, degree of interaction between Wipro and X, between activities of SO and that of UE, and lastly the nature of relationship between UE and the SO, including the relevant contractual terms. So here you will see that whether they are properly communicating amongst each other or not. What is the way of communication? How are they communicating on mail, on whatever form? Nature of interaction, degree of interaction, how much interaction are they having? And then you will also consider that are they related to some extent? The nature of relationship between UE and SO, that also has to be importantly considered. So you can see the geo limited mobile question wala. Here you have to assist the auditor of Geo Limited as to how he can obtain an understanding of how Geo Limited uses the service of the outsourced agency in its operation. So see, even I didn't read the above question. I would have left the above question. I could just simply know the answer by reading this. Assist the auditor as to how he can obtain an understanding of how Geo Limited uses the service of the outsourced agency. So outsourced question, that definitely means SA 402. Services of the outsourced entity. So service organization, whatever service they are providing, we want to understand what services, the nature of relationship, transaction, the degree of interaction among us. Everything has to be considered here. So this 4 mark question, A, B, C, D. If you want to learn, you can also mark this STIR, SMT, STIR, STIR. So S for nature of service, service का nature क्या है? T for transaction की materiality and nature, transaction की materiality and nature. Then I for interaction and R for relationship. Now we have to obtain this understanding from whom? From whom are we obtaining this understanding? With whom are we communicating, contacting as an user auditor? With whom I can communicate and obtain this understanding? These 4 points understanding I have to obtain now.
So management.
So management of user entity, right? So suppose management or TCWG or whatever, you are not able to obtain this understanding from the user entity. You are not able to obtain. Then this comes. That means then you have to ask for type 1 report, type 2 report, because you have to obtain an understanding, right? Similarly, you have to contact the service organization through user entity if you are not available with T1, T2. Then you can visit the same. You can visit the service organization, or you can, if you are not able to visit the service organization, you can send some another auditor on your behalf to visit the same and communicate the same and assess, understand everything about the controls within the SO. ठीक है? So it's easy only. First you have to obtain the report. If not, then you can contact. If they are not picking up the call, then you can straight away visit. If you don't have time, then you can send your another auditor. Easy. Now once we have obtained all the understanding about risk that are there in the internal controls, so we have to now respond to those risks as per SA 330, right? So once we have identified the ROMM, we then respond to those ROMM by performing FAP in accordance with SA 330. So similarly here also, when we have assessed the ROMM in the internal controls by understanding the entity, by understanding the degree of interaction, by understanding the nature of relationship, materiality of the transaction, everything. By now we are done with what? Identifying, assessing the ROMM. Now we have to respond to the assessed ROMM. So in responding, we have to do in accordance with what? SA 330. The user auditor shall determine whether sufficient uploaded audit evidence concerning the relevant financial statement assertion is available from records held at the user entity. So whatever sort of audit evidence you can obtain from the relevant financial statement assertions from the user entity, you will obtain that, and then you will perform further audit procedure to obtain SAI or use another auditor to perform this procedure at SA, service organization. So you will perform this procedure both in user entity as well as in service organization. You will tend to obtain the audit evidences so that you are able to comprehend, you are able to satisfy yourself on the services or the assessed ROMM on the service rendered by outsourcing entity. You will also have to test the controls, testing of control. Do you remember responding wise SA 330 we used to do what? Test of control Or you could also say what? Compliance procedure, right or not? Yes, everyone. So compliance procedure you can do, or you can obtain what? An audit, substantive audit procedure. Substantive audit procedure, right? So now we are starting with TOC. We are starting with TOC, test of control. Just now we saw what? You have to perform TOC both user entity and SO. So now for performing test of control, what do you think? Which report we should obtain? We should obtain type 1 or type 2. Do not see. Just based on your knowledge, what is test of control and which report do you think we should obtain? Type 1 report or type 2 report? Are you getting the question or not? We are now responding to the assess ROMM. So how do we assess? We now start with FAPs. Further audit procedure will start with it. So now we have started with test of controls. We have to now test all the controls which are there. So how do you think what report I should obtain? Type 1 report or type 2 report?
Type 2, sir.
Type 2, why?
Uh, because for assessing the effectiveness of test of controls, na,
So test of control, what do you mean by TOC? Test of control definition क्या थी? Compliance procedure test of control की?
process designing,
That is the
design,
definition of internal
implemented and
controls.
maintained.
I'm not asking definition of internal controls. I'm asking definition of test of controls. What exactly do you do in test of controls? TOC in the compliance procedure. What do we check exactly?
Operating effectiveness.
Operating effectiveness of internal control. We want to assess whether the controls are operating effectively or not. That is the only thing that we want to assess in TOC. So for that matter, it's a kind of mini audit. We will obtain all the information, all the documents, wherever the documentation should have been done or wherever the control will apply. We'll obtain all the such of information, and based on sampling, we'll try to assess out of 10 samples how many samples the controls passed, how many samples controls failed. If suppose the ratio is 9:1, so we'll pass the control. Doesn't matter one time it is failure. But if suppose it is 9:2, then we might increase our sample. We might then again assess based on 10 more samples, and then let's see. So it's a kind of mini audit you perform based on your sampling, and then you ultimately say whether the controls pass or not. Control pass means yes, they are operating effectively. That is what we do in TOC. So operating effectively, operating effectively, operating effectively, the report is given in type 2. The user auditor tells you about whether the controls are operating effectively in type 2 report, not in type 1 report, right? So determine, or sorry, obtain the type 2 report, obtain a type 2 report, then perform appropriate TOC, and lastly use another auditor to perform TOC at SO on behalf of you. Everyone till here, everyone, everything is clear, no doubt. This is a conceptual new concept standard. They've asked 4 or 5 attempts back, as far as I remember, 3 4 attempts back, 4 5 attempts, but it's important. SA 402. Any doubt you can ask right away. Clear everything? So give it a reading for information with respect to controls at sub-service organization, because just now we saw one example where I have given outsourced the employee related service to you, and then you outsource further. So now we have to deal with what? Sub-service organization. So what all information with respect to controls do we have to obtain at sub-service SSO, sub-service organization? Give it a reading and explain to me what exactly are they trying to communicate. Are you able to get or not? Able to understand what they are trying to say? Hmm?
Yes. So
Yeah,
yeah,
so then tell me, Nikita, be a bit louder.
so it's mentioned here if
Sorry.
like so it's mentioned here if the service organization is using uh, kind of a sub-service organization, and the auditor has an option to either report including the sub-service organization controls or exclude it. And
Which
if it
auditor you are talking about? User auditor or service auditor?
service auditor, so
Service
service
auditor will include where?
in his in his uh, in his report type.
Which report? We are concerning here with which report? Type 1 or type 2 reports, right?
Yeah.
You are obtaining report from service auditor, na?
Yes.
Type 1 or type 2 report, you can either include or exclude all the controls that are there in SSO.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
in case the type 1 or type 2 report doesn't include the details
so
of
that
the
means if you are saying that if your
sub-organization.
service auditor is not including controls which are at SSO at sub-service organization in his type 1 or type 2 report,
Then he may perform the requirements as per the essay, like he can understand the nature of the transaction and the service organization and what all we used to do in respect of the service entity for the sub-service organization and include
right. So if we as an auditor are not able to get the controls in the type 1 or type 2 report by the service auditor, we are not able to assess what all controls are there, then we can go and perform accordingly as per SA 402, whatever we can perform in the service organization. The same procedures we can apply in the sub service organization, that is obtain type 1 type 2 report from them, or contact them, or visit their organization, or if we are not able to visit, then we can send another auditor to visit. Okay. So let's see again, if service organization or sub service organization, so sorry, if service organization uses SSO sub service organization, so service auditor SA will report the report that is reported by service auditor in type 1 report or type 2 report can either include or can also exclude the controls which are at SSO. So SSO's relevant control objectives and related controls in service organization, description of its system, and in scope of service auditor's engagement. So if it includes, then this method is called as inclusive method. It is nothing but they have just named the methods, not that you have to go through. But yeah, carve out method. You must have know about this carve out method in India, right? So what do you mean by carve out standards in this carve out provisions, carve out clauses, and carve in Indias? Yes, bolo bolo. Have you gone through this or not? Carve out, carve in.
Sir, in carve out means we will exclude that sub-service organization internal control, the designing means the service auditor will exclude the sub-service organizational designing control, how their control has been established in their organization,
No, no, I'm
and
not talking
include.
about here carve out, carve in. As in Indias, have you? I in general, what do you mean by carve out? In general, what do you mean by carve in?
Oh, okay. So, like India's is some kind of international flavor that is added to it, the Indian standard.
Right.
So something is
So
which
we
is
have
required for the
adopted as is,
yes.
as is. IFRS is adopted as is. As is means completely same as copy paste, as is. But then, yeah, but then Arnab,
And sir, that is inclusive. Inclusive is if there is something that is according to our Indian structure, Indian culture structure, how the accounting reported, uh, um, then we will include that standard. And if that is not required for Indian environment, then that is taken out from that
so right.
India's.
So if anything which is inclusive according to Indian scenario, economic environment, or as per Indian operations, then if at all we are including separately, which was not there in IFRS, then that is carve in. However, something was there in IFRS, but we are excluding it from IFRS while adopting it to India, then that was carve out, right? So similarly here also, if we are including, if they are including, SO service organization is including the same, then we call it what? We call it as inclusive method. However, if the report of the service auditor excludes this method or excludes the controls at SSO, then we'll call it as what? Carve out method. So in either of the method, whatever be the method, carve in method, sorry, inclusive method or carve out method, doesn't matter. The service organization will have to include in the description of controls at a description of the function and the nature of processing performed by the SSO. So even if they are not talking about the controls, whether they are operating effectively or what all sort of control, understanding of the control, their opinion on the control, still, they will have to include in its description of controls a description of functions, nature of processing performed by the subservice organization. This will have to be included anyway. If they have outsourced to another SSO, so they will be giving the details about SSO at least, if not the controls. If type 1 or type 2 report excludes, that means carve out method, and service provided by SSO are relevant to our audit. If they are not relevant, then we are not concerned at all. Right? SA 402 clearly tells in the beginning itself that it must be relevant to the audit. And how do we assess that it is relevant or not? We see that whether is it affecting our financial reporting. And how do we see that whether is it affecting financial reporting and everything? We see based on those 6 points, right? So the concept should be there with you. Then the language will follow. The language will follow once you know what's there. So that is what they are also saying, that controls, if they exclude the controls at SSO, and you find that those controls are relevant to the audit, those expenditure or those transactions at SSO are relevant to the audit, then you can apply this SA in respect of SSO. That means you can directly straight away apply the SA 402 in the case of SSO, even if you have not outsourced. The other entity has outsourced, but still you can go and apply SA 402. Clear? You can read this also. This is also talking about same point. And just go through this question. In the question, just please note that it is given in the suggested answer that they have also mentioned about STIR, STIR. What was this answer? What was the question for answer STIR? STIR का क्या question था?
Obtaining an understanding of the services provided by service organization.
Correct. So you have to also mention that when they ask for SSO. Just remember this. I don't think I need to write the answer exactly what they, since I am just writing the answer beside the question. So it is obvious that the answer relates to this. But apart from that, anything extra you have to write, then I have mentioned that. So the rest is your homework. Again, questions. Till now, no doubt on any question. Are you doing it or not? Test हो गया? ऐसे 200, 300, SQC1. What to do? You only tell now. टेस्ट लेना है कि नहीं लेना है? Shall we conduct the tests or not?
सर टेस्ट दिए हैं बट एक्चुअल में क्या लास्ट के कुछ क्वेश्चंस समझ नहीं आ रहे थे, तो फिर वहाँ पे मैंने टेस्ट छोड़ के फिर वापस मतलब रिवीजन चालू कर दिया, क्वेश्चन ही नहीं समझ आया मुझे लास्ट के एक दो।
So you should try attempt, and I told you based on the suggested answer you have to assess what mistakes you did. You can again revise after the test also, na? You have to give test accordingly as per what you would have given in exam. Revise once, twice, thrice if you want, but not in between. What is the point turn? I'll then have to start conducting live test here only then, right here in front of me. Fine. So what's the status of others test? Have everyone given 200, 300 wala? Bolo bolo. Then Lakshmi and Sagar has given. Apart from them, I don't think anyone has given. So you will all give by tonight only. Okay? Do you want me also to join on call when you are giving it? For your sincerity, you want me, then I can come. You have got to be adhere to deadline. You have to set a deadline, set a target. and stick to that. 1 or 2 days, okay. One odd day, fine. Reach to Saturday now. Tell me, you want me to be there or not? बोलो भाई.
matlab zero, I get 0 out of 0, means I can't relate that this is the point. I understand that from there it is coming, but all the points I could not remember, so because maybe due to lack of revision.
So you're not able to recollect the points.
Yes sir, yes sir.
So once you sit and start writing, definitely you'll come out with at least 1 or 2 points. And then rest of the points, whatever you tend to forget, you can, the note that I told you to forward it to me. The note that I told you to forward it to me, that whatever points that you are missing, whatever mistakes you are committing, there you will write. And then you will see that, okay, now you are able to recalling at least those questions, if not all. Yeah, we can discuss it in class, but not all are giving, na. 2 3 people are giving, so what's the use then to discuss? Then Lakshmi, if everyone will be giving it, then all the point is to discuss it after you have given every. Now then you will be in a better position to assess and relate accordingly. Tonight what time you decide, 10, 10:30, 11, whatever time you decide, we'll then discuss. If you want tonight only, we'll discuss. Come to essay 450. So 5 minute standard, not much big. So it says what? First of all, the heading says the evaluation of misstatements identified during the audit. So you have to evaluate whatever misstatements that you have identified during your audit. So EMIDA, you can say it in short for you to retain, but the name should be proper: evaluation of misstatements identified during the audit. So what exactly are we supposed to do here in SA 450? We have to first assess that what misstatements we have identified during the audit. MIDA, evaluate the misstatements that we have identified during the audit. And how exactly are we going to evaluate? We have to assess whether is it material or not. First of all, whether the misstatement it is material MMS or non-material, that is NMMS, non-material misstatements. Is it material misstatements or non-material misstatement? If it is non-material, then okay, ignore it. You can tell to the management on whatever you want to communicate with the management TCWG, you can do so, and then fine, leave it. But if it is a material misstatement, you will communicate to management and tell them to correct. Getting this? Tell them to correct this. You'll communicate to management and tell them to correct this misstatement. Since it's a material misstatement, tell the management to correct this. Now management will either agree to correct, right? They will either correct the misstatement, or they will not agree. Not agree, stating what? Stating that it is non-material misstatement. Stating that it is a non-material misstatement. Either they can agree and correct, rectified, or they will not agree and say that it is a non-material misstatement, so we are not concerned with that. So if they agree and rectified, then the auditor has to do what? Auditor again has to perform one more procedure. He'll have to check whether misstatements, whether material misstatements rectified or still there, or still it is not yet rectified. You will still have to check after management says that okay fine, we have rectified, we agreed to your point, okay fine. But then also after that you have to check whether the misstatement is rectified or not. If you, the management does not agree, and states that it is a non-material misstatement, but you feel as an auditor that no, it is a material misstatement, then what you will do? Like what we have done earlier as well. Whenever management doesn't agree, then where do we go? Where do we go? If the management does not agree, then where do we go? TCWG, right? So if the management does not agree, then we will go to TCWG and tell them to let the management know that we need this correction. Still management does not say and tells that no, this is a material, not a material misstatement, then we'll obtain a confirmation from them. Obtain confirmation, obtain a confirmation from the management or TCWG that this is a non-material misstatement according to you. And still if we are of the opinion that no, this is a material misstatement, this needs to be modified in our opinion, so we will then see in our opinion para what all points we need to include. So that is a major, you can say a synopsis of this standard 450, SA 450. First, we have to evaluate what is the misstatements that we have identified during the audit, and then whatever misstatements that we have identified, we have to assess whether it is material or non-material. If it is material misstatement, then we have to communicate to the management and tell them to rectify the same. If management agrees, then check whether they have rectified. If they do not agree, tell the TCWG to tell management for the correction. If still management persists that no, this is not a material misstatement, then we'll obtain a confirmation from the management that okay, fine. If you are telling that it is non-material, tell us in writing and confirmation. Fine. Still, if we are of the opinion, then we can give in our opinion para whatever adjustment we need to take. Qualify the report in case of disagreement. Yes, we can qualify if we feel that yes, material misstatement is there, the misstatement is material, and management confirmation is not sufficient, that they are trying to say that this is a non-material misstatement, but in our opinion, in according to us, this is a material misstatement. So I hope you have we have done SA 450. I want you to quickly give a read. First, you will read this evaluating the effect of uncorrected misstatement. First, you will read this one. Then you will read this number 2 communication with TCWG. And then finally you will read the communication of corrected misstatements. Okay? This has to be your flow. Just give it a read फटाफट से. फटाफट से just give it a read right now. Any doubt? Any doubt? So just come on to this question. This has been asked multiple times. Sources of misstatement. May 11, May 13, RTP November 18, RTP May 22 also. So what could be the sources of misstatement? It could be either inaccuracy in gathering or processing data. That means your input is wrong. Your input is wrong, then definitely your output will be wrong. Inaccuracy in gathering data. That is input. Gathering is input. And processing is processing. So inaccurate input or inaccurate processing, inaccurate gathering or inaccurate processing. So then definitely your misstatement will happen. Similarly, omission. If there is any omission in the disclosure, in the notes to account, in the amounts, in the financial statement, wherever there is any omission, that will tend amount to misstatement. An incorrect accounting estimate. Suppose you should have taken 2% PFDD. You are taking 10% PFDD. In the past, it has been saw that average bad debts that occurred is 0.5, 0.8%. 0.6%, and now for this particular year your estimate account balance you have taken it as 10%. So then again an incorrect accounting estimate arising from overlooking or clear misrepresentation of the facts. Clearly you are misjudging and misrepresenting the facts, and based on that you are taking 10%. And then judgments of the management concerning accounting estimate. Whatever judgments you feel regarding these accounting estimates, for example, just now I told you what 10% that the auditor consider unreasonable, which according to the auditor is not reasonable, right? It should be either around 1 or 2 past average. Why suddenly there is a sharp rise? So if you want to learn these 4 points, you can remember the vowels of English: A, E, I, O, U. So from A, E we have accounting estimate. From A, E we have what? Accounting estimate, point related to that. From I we have inaccuracy. O for omission, and U for unreasonable judgment by management, and unreasonable according to auditor. Unreasonable according to auditor. Go through this question right now. अभी अभी देखो. And also ऐसे 402 right now. No more. Just before, as an auditor, would this be violation of any standard? Before that, the line, you find that this had not been quantified in materiality terms for either engagement as a whole or for any of the balance tested. That is, for neither it is assessed at the assertion level or neither at the financial statement as a whole. It has not been assessed as a financial statement as a whole or neither at the assertion level. And this was the requirement in SA 315, if you remember, right? I also asked few days back, why are we required to assess this as a at the assertion level? Then you all told, Dhanlakshmi told exactly what? Because we want to determine our further audit procedure. So materiality has to be determined both at the overall financial information level and also at the assertion levels. SA 320 also talks about the same, that if at all you find that there are certain places which will fall below the financial statement as a whole materiality, that means materiality set at the financial statement, if you find that there will be certain events, condition, transaction which fall below that limits, that level, then you will also assess and among quantify the materiality for that particular level or particular statement as well. If you remember the question just above the revision of materiality, are you getting this or not? Puja, come to SA 402, go through this question.
फोर फिफ्टी ऐसे जो है इवैल्यूएशन ऑफ मिसस्टेटमेंट वाला,
Hmm.
इसमें ये लोग ड्यू टू फ्रॉड या एरर है उसके बारे में क्यों कुछ भी बात नहीं कर रहा ये स्टैंडर्ड?
तो मिसस्टेटमेंट कैन बी आइदर ड्यू टू फ्रॉड और एरर, दोनों के केस में ना, बट मिसस्टेटमेंट इज व्हाट वी आर फोकसिंग हियर. यू
ओके,
आर
मतलब इवैल्यूएशन।
इवेल्युएट मिसस्टेटमेंट तो
तो
मिल ही गया है. देयर यू कैन फाइंड इन ऐसे 240 और ऐसे 315 में, wherever you can find whatever misstatements. Now we have to evaluate the misstatements that we have identified into materiality or non materiality terms. If it is material, then we have to communicate and get it rectified or take any sort of appropriate action that we need to take. So we are taking appropriate action in our opinion para if management is not accordingly responding the same what we want. So misstatements have been identified accordingly, whether due to fraud or error, as per SA 200 240, right? So, but now after that, what if the level of misstatement, is it material or not? We have to evaluate that identified misstatement, evaluate into materiality, non-materiality, and correctly address now. So the more focus here is on the correction part, rectification part of the misstatements in SA 450. So I think this question is from here only. Just first read this point. Reporting by UA. So user auditor will modify the opinion if there he finds that he is not able to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence, or whatever audit evidence he found that the controls are not present well, so as to give an unqualified opinion. So whatever reason he is modifying the same, then user auditor will modify The user auditor shall, however, not refer to the work of service auditor. He cannot refer to the work of service auditor. It's not his responsibility. He is obtaining, the user auditor is obtaining all the information from the service auditor. He is obtaining type 1, type 2 report. Whatever responsibility is upon the user auditor only. So user auditor will not refer to the work of service auditor if the user auditor's report containing an unmodified opinion. If reference to the work of service auditor is relevant to an understanding of a modification, so then yes, the user auditor's report shall indicate that such reference does not diminish my responsibility. If you feel that no, I need to mention that there was a type 1, type 2 report because of which I am modifying my opinion and I need to refer that service auditor's report in my opinion, then yes, you can refer to that. But then again, you have to mention that this does not diminish my responsibility in any manner. So now they are telling that in the question that this was a carve-out method, and CA Raman, while reviewing the unmodified audit report drafted by his assistant, found that a reference has been made to the work done by the service auditor. So he found that the reference has been made by his assistant, and this reference relates to service auditor. So CA Raman asked his assistant to remove such a reference. So he asked correctly, right? His ask was right, and modify report accordingly. He wants to modify the report. Yes, he's correct. He should modify report accordingly and should not include the reference to the service auditor report. However, if he feels considered that yes, it is necessary, then in that case also he should clearly mention that it will not diminish my responsibility. Whether Raman is correct? Yes, as per SA 5705 also you will write and reporting by user auditor. And accordingly, you have to give this specifically, this both points should come. A, B, and if reference to the work of that 3 points has to be the main part of the answer. Clear? So see, once you go to the questions, go through the homework that I have given you, then only you will tend to say that okay, now it's almost fine, everything. It's not something rocket science. If you know this, let's suppose next question, let's see what are they asking. In the course of audit of Tech Limited, you observed that processing of accounting data was given to third party. At once you could relate, right? Since it is outsourced, that means SA 402 will or should trigger, right? Should hit your brain. Now, as an auditor, what would be your considerations regarding the nature and extent of activities undertaken by service organization, so as to determine whether those activities are relevant to the audit, and if so, to assess their effect on audit risk. So the main point here is what they are saying in here. What would be your consideration regarding the nature and extent of activities undertaken by SO? That means you want to understand the nature of transaction, extent of activities, relationship, degree of interaction, right? Able to get it what I'm trying to say, obtaining and understanding. That is what they are focusing towards. So once you see, once you try many questions you solve, then you will realize that okay, if I know the topic, I can at least search in my brain what exactly this is hitting. It should hit some bells. Try to solve this last this question. Okay, this one is already solved now. Okay, so more or less one was with respect to SSO and the other one was with respect to understanding user entities. User auditor has to understand the that part. This SSO wala question here also I have included. No, SSO wala question is included here, and this was with respect to this reporting by user auditor, right? So this question mark this as very important. And then wherever I found that okay, the question can be made, I have made the question. See here, this is my question only, which I feel that if they want to make a new question, they can make like this. Discuss the procedure to be applied in case the user auditor is unable to obtain sufficient understanding from the user entity. So they have given, if the user auditor is unable to obtain sufficient understanding of the user entity, then you will follow these 4 points. They can ask you a question like this also. They'll give you something Ramayana, Mahabharat, Gita. This has outsourced to this relates to this. They have been established since 1990s, and service entities providing services to like this many entities. User auditor tried to obtain understanding, but he's unable to obtain. Then this is how they frame, right? So go through this standard answer, question answer, revise again. I told you, standards require a lot many revision as compared to other chapters. And it's not like you can score less in standards, but you have to give some efforts. If you give efforts, definitely you score better. 20 to 25 marks is asked from standards. And so you must all be aware also, right? Your exam is in November 2023, but from May 24, CA Institute is going to announce on CA Day, right? Regarding new course applicability from May 24. So if anyone is having any sort of second thoughts that should I wait, or like any thoughts on like that, so please do not even think of for a second. You have this your November attempt, and it's not like if you will be giving it a new course you'll get good opportunities, or you will have to give only 3 papers. Again, definitely May 24 we expect pass percentage to be good because of the new syllabus and new curriculum, the paper to be easy, but you have to clear. You can't wait for this, right? And anyway, it's not everything is sure. It's not sure that yes, paper will be easy, or the pass percentage will be. It's anytime it's an observation that we have seen from the past. But don't go anything. Don't think like this. That even 1% of thought, if it comes in your mind, talk to me. Do not think this 3 paper only I'll have to give. So let's go there. Okay, this is the attempt. This you are preparing. We are giving since a lot many days. Significant efforts you all are already giving. Clear in this attempt only. And again, if the preparation is not according to you what you are thinking, then you have to just think that okay, from now this has to be it. This has to be it. Now everything is done. I'm done with everything. What you think you can do exactly. If you think like that, definitely you will be able to do. If you think on other lines, okay, fine, this other thought process coming into your mind, why not this attempt? If not, then if not this, then next. Anything apart from passing this, if it's coming into your mind, please refrain it. Avoid. You think positive, you will get that. Okay? So we'll start with SF 500. What do you want me to? Do you want a break or shall we start tomorrow? We can start with today as well.